Welcome to Dad's Watching Sports. It is episode 23, Sunday, July 12th, 2020. Michael Draper and Matt Kirk. Kyle Castle's out on vacation. I believe, Matt, that Kyle is gone to Fiji for his vacation. Took the three kids and the wife, courtesy of the Castle's law firm, going out to Fiji. So Kyle's out there, tanning himself right now as we are sitting here, back in the States dealing with COVID. It just doesn't seem quite fair, does it?
No, I'm going to have to get him to bring me a couple of bottles of that Fiji water back.
That's right. Yeah. Come on, Kyle. Help the brothers out. Let's help us out. So this is Dad's Watching Sports again. Michael Draper and Matt Kirk. We have got a special guest coming up later on in the show. Ryan Lemon of Kentucky Sports Radio will be joining us later on, and we'll be talking to him about what he does. He works for Kentucky Sports Radio. He's in real estate. He and his wife have also adopted several children, and we're going to talk about that, as obviously, again, this show is about our lives as dads, and we'll talk to him in depth about that, and then also some sports stuff and some funny stuff that they've done with the Kentucky Sports Radio program as well. Thank you for checking us out. You can check us out, obviously, anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can check us out on our Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. We do a little TikTok as well. And obviously, we'd love for you to check us out on dadswatchingsports.com. You can find all the info for the show. You can get the latest show downloaded there. You can also find out a little bit about us. And maybe Kyle will post some pictures from his trip to Fiji on the website as well. Also want to give a plug for the RTF Sports Network. We mention them every single week. We are on that network Mondays at 10 a.m. Central and Tuesdays at 4. Also, the RTF Sports Network, Matt, has started this thing called The Great Debate, where I don't know if we're going to do it every Saturday, but it's going to be a couple of Saturdays throughout the month where they're going to take 4 to 5 hosts and co-hosts of different podcasts that are on that network, and almost kind of in an around the horn type of program where they're going to have multiple topics to debate and then have people kind of going back and forth. I had a great opportunity to participate in the first one just a day ago where we talked about is Phil Jackson the greatest coach of all time, or is he a product of having some of the best talent? We talked about the NCAA and should the NCAA even really be around anymore now that the conferences are really starting to kind of do their own thing. We also talked about the NBA draft lottery and is that rigged? I personally think it is. If you go back to 1985 and see them bang the thing against the drum where the Knicks ended up getting Patrick Ewing, we talked about that as well. So it's really cool. So check out rtsportsnetwork.com, or you can check them out on the Facebook page as well. And check out the Great Debate coming on Saturdays. Matt, I'm hoping that you're going to get an opportunity to participate in one of those. So let me ask you one of the questions we talked about last night. Phil Jackson, he's had Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, he's had Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal, and he also has 11 championships. You think he's that great of a coach, or is he more of a product of having such great talent to have coached?
So talent can be anywhere. I think that he is the greatest basketball coach, probably the second best basketball coach of all time, but he is the reason why those players were able to play together, why they bought into what he did, why they performed at that high level. And you see it so many times. And I know, if Kyle were here, he would for sure be defending his boy here, but LeBron James is a key example of this. He's gotten coaches canned at every stop he's made, all 4 different stops he's made. And to me, that just shows that, that these kids these days just aren't the same as they were back then. But, he had to make Pippen, Dennis Rodman, and Jordan work together. He made, Kobe and Shaq, Kobe and Powell, Kobe and Bynum. To me, he is the greatest basketball coach of all time.
So one other question that was posed to us by Michael, who's the kind of the host of this thing last night, was somebody mentioned LeBron, and he says, okay, so you got LeBron. He's 2-5 in NBA Finals, 1-2 with the Heat, and has lost with several with the Cavs, and one with the Heat as well to your Mavs. If Phil Jackson would have coached any of the Cavaliers or Heat teams that LeBron has been on so far in his career, would his NBA championship ring, would he have more NBA championships, do you think?
I don't think that LeBron's playing style would play to the triangle offense. And he's not a ball-dominant player. He doesn't have to have the ball to be good. Yeah. So, no, I do not think that the triangle would have made any kind of a difference.
Okay. Well, I thought that he might have one more. I think just because, and my reasoning was, I think Jackson is the coach of one of those players and places specifically in Cleveland. I think more free agents are going to join that cause to where they would have had probably a little bit better of a roster to be able to contend. But then if you look back at it, when he has made the finals in Cleveland, the ones they didn't win, really they were overmatched in pretty much all the finals that they played in when he was there with Cleveland, other than the one that they won. So I don't know if it made that big of a difference. So Matt, I am clearly I'm not in my home that I normally am. I am on vacation. My family and I and my wife's family came out to Lake Hartwell. We're kind of nestled essentially literally on the state line of Georgia and South Carolina. And today was kind of officially day one. Like we got here yesterday, kind of got settled, did some grocery shopping, kind of whatever. But today was really kind of officially day one of lake vacation, as I literally can look out the window and see the lake right there. So let me recap a little bit about how day one went for you. So we get a boat. We're renting a boat for the week. We get out on the boat. We get out and we're swimming. So I'm in the water. I think my mother-in-law's in the water. My wife's in the water and our daughter's in the water. My father-in-law is in the boat along with our son. And I'm like, hey, Hayden, why don't you come down here? And he's got a puddle jumper on. And so my father-in-law bends over to put him in, and he got about halfway down and essentially he dropped Hayden into the water. I was luckily able enough to kind of catch him a little bit. And then I'm sitting in basically like a float. Hayden lands on me. We're fine for a second. And then he kind of freaks out. We tip over. I'm like holding him up out of the water, and I don't have my float anymore, and I don't have anything on. So I'm like, literally going under the water in the lake, trying to hold my 1-year-old son up. It was a disaster, man. And then by the time we finally got Hayden back on the boat, he's just bawling and he's scarred for life. And it's the worst thing ever, but we'll try to get him out. So that happens. In the midst of all of that, my wife, I guess, was a little concerned what was happening. So she kind of freaks out a little bit. And in the meantime, when she's doing that, loses her Fitbit watch. So she was trying to figure out what was going on, loses the Fitbit watch. It is now sitting at the bottom of the lake. We get back to the dock, and I am tying up the boat. And then if you see this band on my finger, a wave came in. It hit the boat hit my arm. My arm hit the side of the dock and took a chunk out of my finger. Probably need to go get a tetanus shot, but I'm going to kind of leave that one as is. And then if the day couldn't get any better for day one, as we were heading out for kind of our nighttime ride, my father-in-law was getting on the dock and tripped over, I think, a nail and fell out on the dock, spilled his drink everywhere. So it's been a rough first day. We're hoping to have a bounce back on day two. But, what do you think about the Draper family vacation day one?
It sounds pretty wild. It kind of seems like it might be like an episode of or like the movie Meet the Parents. All the things all kind of pile up there.
Yeah.
But I do find it kind of odd. You said you were in the water and you had nothing on. Were y'all skinny dipping?
Yeah, no, we were. I was. I'm glad you called that out. No, we were all fully clothed in terms of our proper swim attire. I just didn't like. That's good. Once I had a float and I had lost said float, so I was basically there treading water, trying to hold a 30-pound beast of my son up out of the water because he was not very happy with it. So it was a rough start to the day.
So it's been a few months, but did the training for the Dad Olympics prepare you for that moment?
It did. But one thing I didn't prepare myself for was holding 30 pounds above my head while treading water and keeping my head above water. I was not prepared for that. But I do think the leg strength from the Dad Combine and doing all those squats and things like that, I think really played well for me to have that kind of continual motion to keep my tread going. And then I even forgot about this. So my father-in-law falls on the deck. We get all that kind of cleaned up, get him on the boat. We get out on the boat, and we had just eaten dinner. And we're probably 15, 20 minutes out on the water, and we're riding around. And then all of a sudden I'm like, man, I don't feel so good. And so it's between everything, man, it's been a rough day one. But us Drapers / Swatlers are resilient, and we will bounce back tomorrow with a good day. I'm excited. Our daughter, she has wanted to go fishing, so I bought her a fishing pole, bought myself one. We are going out first thing in the morning. We're just going to fish off the dock, hopefully catch some fish. And tomorrow I'm confident will be a better day for vacation day number 2 as we get things rolling. So, but just wanted to share that with with you, Matt, and all the listeners out there. Hopefully Kyle and his family in Fiji are having a little bit better time. I would imagine that they probably are. All right, Matt, we've got to go to a break here in just a minute. I'm gonna tease kind of what we're going to talk about coming back after the break, and then we'll get into this after the break. But so much has happened really over the past couple of weeks. We felt, looking back 3-4 weeks ago, I think we all felt really good about the NFL, the NBA. We were so on Major League Baseball, but felt good about the NHL, and we felt pretty good about NCAA football. Well, as you can imagine, the numbers are spiking in terms of the cases for COVID, and you can read into that what you may. But there's definitely some uneasiness going on across the landscape of sports, both collegiate and professional. And so what I wanted to do tonight, and we'll do this after the break, is just simply talk about what are the things that we need to talk about in terms of, if you were to be the new NFL commissioner, how are you handling the upcoming season? If we're in charge of NCAA football, how are we handling getting these teams back on campus, getting them back acclimated, getting them ready for a season, and then actually playing? Matt, we had a couple of conferences that came out towards the last part of this past week that said we're only playing conference games. So that's going to be something interesting to watch. I believe it was the Pac-12, the Big Ten, and the ACC have already come out and saying we're just playing our conference schedule. And I would imagine the rest of the conferences are in line with that. I'll toss it to you first, just your take on that. And then when we come back from the break, we can get a little bit more in depth with it.
I think that the conference-only games are a great idea. I like it because it keeps everything centralized in that area, which, now it's weird because West Virginia is in the Big 12, and they would be playing teams like Texas and, just all across other parts of the country instead of where they are. I think it's great myself for them to stay in conference because of the testing rules per conference. And also, it has a lot to do with the scheduling. I think that the conference play for everyone is the best idea. And like the SEC, they could do a lot of things. They could divide it up to SEC North, SEC South, or SEC West and SEC East. And, they could just play in 2 sites. And I think that would be the best. And each conference could do it that way.
So it seems like, really – these conferences and really the NCAA as a whole for football are really having to rethink basically everything. It's almost like they're starting at square one, and it's July 12th. We're supposed to be playing football at the end of August, early September. Do you think we have enough time to get all this situated, get schedules redone, figure out venues, and actually have a season that starts in September? Do you anticipate this being pushed back? What's your take on all that?
What I think they should do for everyone's health first is that they should just say, hey, we're going to play this in the spring, because they should have a vaccine between now and January. And if they do and it's effective, I think they should say, hey, we're going to play starting in April. And then they play spring, then they go into summer, and then they play again in the fall. And I think you just do not have a playoff. You don't do any kind of bowl games. You play 8 season games, and then you move on and you play again in the fall.
So essentially, in your proposal, there's no national champion. It's just a season, just to say we had a season to get those seniors their last bit of eligibility being played, and then that's kind of it.
Yes, that's what I think would be best for everybody.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, we're going to find out very quickly because a lot's going to happen in a very short period of time. Like I said, over the past really 5 days, we've had several of these conferences say we're doing conference only, and that obviously is going to create a trickle-down effect. I would imagine early part of this next week we'll probably see the SEC and the Big 12 say the same thing, and probably the smaller conferences as well. What will be really interesting to see is what the college football playoff decides to do if they do play this fall. If, let's say, there's a 10-game. Now we got to go to a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about the NFL and the NBA and how would we handle their upcoming seasons for them as well. We'll do that. Plus, we got Ryan Lemon from Kentucky Sports Radio coming up. We'll be right back after that. Thanks for checking out this week's episode of Dad's Watching Sports. We hope you subscribe to our show in Apple Podcast app as well, or wherever you listen to podcasts. But are you following us on social media? Now, whether your thing is Facebook, Twitter, the Gram, YouTube, or yes, even TikTok, you can find some great dad content on all of our pages. Now, enough of this nonsense. We just need to pay Kirk's PlayStation internet bill. Now, back to the show with Matt, Kyle, Michael, and all the fun of Dad's Watching Sports. We're back on Dad's Watching Sports. It's the show all about our lives as dads. Also, we dabble in a little sports from time to time when they're actually played. Michael Draper and Matt Kirk here. Kyle Castles and his family enjoying the beautiful beaches of Fiji thanks to the Castles Law firm, Castles Family Law. I know the two boys and little Hannah are enjoying themselves. Kyle's probably sitting on the sand sipping a pina colada or some fancy fruity drink. And man, here we are, Matt, just kind of hanging out, talking about some sports. Dad's Watching Sports. That's what we do. We've got Ryan Lemon coming up later on in the program. Ryan is the co-host of Kentucky Sports Radio. If you haven't checked them out, if you're an SEC fan, even if you're not a Kentucky fan, they put out some great content. Yes, they talk predominantly about University of Kentucky athletics, but they do a lot of other cool stuff. We're going to talk to Ryan about some of the other stuff that they do. If you think our movie bracket was great, you need to check out some of the brackets that they do as well. But we'll talk with Ryan here as we come back from our next break, which we're excited to have him. So, Matt, we just talked a little bit about some NCAA football and kind of if we were in charge, what would be some of the things that we would do. I'll kind of recap really quickly what I think I would do. I think the NCAA's hands are really tied. I think with the conferences really pulling back and saying, hey, we're just going to do conference schedules. And I think that's probably the right thing to do. It will be interesting to see, do teams like Kentucky and Louisville still play, even though they're not in the same conference when they're just, an hour and a half apart. Same for Georgia and Georgia Tech, Clemson and South Carolina. I think Clemson and South Carolina have been playing since like the early 1900s every single season. So did they lose that rivalry game for a year? And look, I know at the end of the day, is a rivalry football game more important than potentially people getting sick? Absolutely not. Let's not pretend that that's the case. College football is not that important. But I think as a fan, we want to get, we get excited about this and we got to think about what is it going to look like. So I think the NCAA's hands being kind of forced here. And at the end of the day, I think we will see some football this fall. I think that things are going to turn for a better here in the next few weeks. And I think we'll see some football. My guess is we only get a handful of games in before they say, hey, we're going to put a stop to this and maybe pick back up. Or maybe we just kind of say the 2020 season is kind of a wash, kind of like college basketball had to do with their NCAA tournament back this past March as well. So, but we will find out very soon. Like I said, with all these teams, all these conferences making this, I would imagine in the next 4 or 5 days, Matt, we're gonna find something, find out what the next plan is. So, we just talked about college football. Let's talk a little bit about the other brand of football, the professional leagues, NFL. Matt, if you were Commissioner Roger Goodell, with everything going on and what it looks like is going to be happening across the college football landscape, what's your take on what the NFL should do, and how would you handle it if you're dubbed right now today the NFL commissioner?
So if I were the NFL commissioner today, I would group these teams up by geographic location. Just like, you're in Texas and you have the Dallas Cowboys and the Houston Texans, but they're in 2 different conferences. You have the Tennessee Titans and you have the Atlanta Falcons within a 4-hour drive of each other. And they don't play each other, which I get they're in different conferences. But it needs to be a geographical split. They need to have 4 teams or 6 teams, maybe even 8 in each area. And then you have just one central location, just like what they're doing in the NBA, but you have multiple locations. And then you just let these teams go at it, and then they play each other twice. You still have a 16-game season. And, you play your I guess you would pick 4 teams to play twice. And then you would just do it that way, and you just let them duke it out, and then you can make one site, for the playoff games. I think that these people are professionals. Other professionals are going to work. I know me, I'm working from home, which I'm pretty fortunate. But with you, you're having to go to the office and you're having to do things. and we're making far less money than these people are, and we're still having to do our stuff, having to take care of our families. So I think that the NFL players should be held to the same standard as the same as all professional athletes. In a time like this in America, what people need are sports to keep things going. And I think that they should for sure play.
That's a great point that you brought up about, they're professional. And, we just talked about NCAA football, and the argument could be made, those individuals, at least not right now, are not getting paid to play the game. And so how can you forcibly make them play games, especially if they don't want to? Now, I do have a couple of people that I know that are associated with several different college football programs, and everything that I've been told from those individuals based off of conversations that they've had with players that are already on campuses, a vast, vast, vast majority of the players, I think, want to play and are almost like, hey, let's figure this out, because we're not, we aren't interested in backing off for a spring season or not having a season altogether. But it's an interesting point you made about the NFL, because they are professionals. And yes, a lot of professionals, especially really across the country, are going back to work if they haven't already. Kind of the antithesis to that, though, is there are going to be some NFL players, and there's going to be some Major League Baseball players that we've already seen that say, hey, I don't know that I'm comfortable. I don't know that I'm interested in being a part of this and going back into work, so to speak, before I'm ready. So that will be really interesting to kind of see how that takes place. I think my perspective is I think the NFL, it's just going to be really interesting to see what they do over the next couple of weeks again, to see, do they make that change? The one thing the NFL has really going for it is the TV money. They're going to be fine from a financial standpoint if they can just get a product out there and get it on TV, because the ratings will be absolutely through the roof. We'll kind of finish up on this conversation, Matt, with just some NBA talk. So the NBA has made their way back down to Florida at the Disney World Resort, the sports resort there. And the teams are starting to gather together. They're starting to get ready. The schedules have been put out. It looks like we're going to have an NBA season. I think that they're doing the right thing. I mean, I think anytime that you can take groups of teams and either get them in, 2 or 3 different locations, and kind of like you alluded to with the NFL, have a geographical common area that all goes to one area and kind of plays there, or like they're doing. And then if the NBA and the NHL have 1 or 2 host cities, I think that's what we have to do. And I think that the NBA, what's going to be interesting to see is, the NBA is really, over the past couple of years, is really kind of taken a step up in terms of its marketability and its popularity in the country. For a long time, really after Jordan retired, it took a big hit. It's really starting to make a huge push back. And I think if they can pull this off and do it right and do it well and still finish their season and crown a champion, I think it really propels the NBA to really kind of move forward as really making some moves up there to get close to the NFL, I guess you could say, in terms of its marketability and just fan interaction and fan participation and things like that. Any thoughts from you about the NBA at all?
I am so tired of seeing these $1 million athletes getting paid in the millions, and they're going to complain about what they're getting to eat.
Oh, I know.
This. It drives me insane, man. And these guys are getting paid, and they're getting paid well. This is for sure, weird circumstance, but America needs sports, and that's what they need. And I get, that they're down there quarantining. They're doing their thing, and it's probably not all that fun, but they're still getting to play the game of basketball, which is making them plenty of money. And I think that they just need to stop complaining. That's the only thing I have, and I cannot wait to watch the Mavericks play again and get to see the NBA again in live sports, and it not be and it just not be taped or old highlights.
Yeah, I'm glad you hit on that, because some of the players that are getting on social media and taking pictures of their dinner and saying like this is garbage, and I think Rajon Rondo took a picture of the room and was complaining about it. It's like, come on. I mean, know your audience, know that people are suffering out there from financially and mentally, really kind of across the board. and things could be a lot worse for you. I think John Morant came out today and said, "Hey, I'm not opposed to the food at all. I think it tastes good, and I'm not a spoiled brat." Essentially, what he said, and kudos to him for doing that, because it's pretty annoying that they're acting like that. But it looks as if, as of right now, we're going to have NBA, even though Florida is one of the biggest states out there in terms of number of cases right now. But it looks like we're going to have the NBA. The NHL looks like they're going to be rolling soon as well. So the MLS, I'm actually sitting here watching Real Salt Lake just got through with one of their games on ESPN, I believe 2 or maybe ESPN. And so MLS is back as well. So sports are coming back slowly but surely. It's an exciting time. So speaking of soccer, Matt, so last week on the show, I put some homework assignments out to everyone to adopt an EPL, English Premier League team. Tell us a little bit about who you ended up going with, anything that you discovered over the past week about the team that you chose.
Okay, so I ended up going with Chelsea FC, Chelsea Football Club. And the reason I chose them is because they have a member from Team USA. His name is Christian. Excuse my butchering, Christian. I know you're listening. Christian Pulisic.
Yep.
He's a forward for Team USA and for Chelsea FC. But one thing that I learned about Chelsea FC this week, for one, it's my wife's favorite soccer team. Happy wife and happy life. That's why I ended up switching with them.
There you go.
But they're also going for Manchester United's goalie. They want to trade for the goalie for Manchester United, Dean Henderson. It looks like they are they're pretty hell bent on getting him. And I like an aggressive team that's going to go for what they want.
There you go. So I've got to ask, how did your wife become a fan of Chelsea?
Honestly, she's a huge soccer fan. She played high school soccer.
Okay.
Was all-state goalie. She has hands of steel. Or probably not hands of steel, but you know what I mean. Her hands are as soft as fresh linen.
There you go.
But
we'll just stop you right there.
But yeah. Sorry. Might have to start talking about that new team name in Washington again.
We'll stop all that. We'll stop that right now. Stop that right now.
So she just, I think she just liked watching them when she was growing up. Huge soccer fan. Didn't really get the whole backstory on it, to be quite honest, or maybe she told me and I was daydreaming about watching sports. But
there we go. Yeah. Well, Chelsea is definitely a good club to follow. So we'll keep up with that. We'll get with Kyle next week when he joins us back from his vacation in Fiji, and we'll find out. I believe he's going with Tottenham, the Hotspurs, but we'll see. And if he does, if that is who he ends up choosing, they've got a match on the 15th against my Newcastle United team on the 15th of July. So hopefully, if that's who Kyle chose, when we come back next week for our show, we'll have a little match to talk about between our two teams, and we'll be all in. So we're gonna be all in on the EPL. I'm excited about it. We teased last week on the show that we're gonna talk about some NASCAR too, and pick our favorite driver that we're gonna follow the rest of the season, and really go after that. We will do that next week on the show as well, because we want Kyle to be a part of that conversation. So I know everybody's eagerly excited to hear about who we are choosing as our NASCAR drivers as well, but we'll get to that. And then one thing we're going to talk about next week, Matt, is I see in English Premier League, I don't know if you know this or not, but at the end of the season every year, the bottom 3 teams get relegated down to essentially what's like the minor leagues. And then the top 3 teams from the minor leagues get sent up to the EPL, and that happens every single season. So the one thing I want us to talk about next week, and I'm excited to talk about this, is what would that look like in other sports? Like, for instance, in the SEC, is it like Ole Miss has now been relegated and Memphis is now the newest member of the SEC for a season? And we'll talk about that across the sports world to see what our thoughts might be on. I think that could be really cool. I mean, it definitely keeps people from tanking in professional sports. So we'll talk about that coming up next week. But guys, we got to go to a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to be joined by Ryan Lemon of Kentucky Sports Radio. Ryan's got really cool stuff to talk with us about. So we will do that. You're listening to Dad's Watching Sports. We got Michael Draper, Matt Kirk, Kyle, and Fiji sipping on some pina coladas. We will be right back. Thanks for checking out this week's episode of Dad's Watching Sports. We hope you subscribe to our show in Apple Podcast app as well, or wherever you listen to podcasts. But are you following us on social media? Now, whether your thing is Facebook, Twitter, the Gram, YouTube, or yes, even TikTok, you can find some great dad content on all of our pages. Now, enough of this nonsense. We just need to pay Kirk's PlayStation internet bill. Now, back to the show with Matt, Kyle, Michael, and all the fun of Dad's Watching Sports. Welcome back to Dad's Watching Sports. It is Sunday, July 12th. Michael Draper and Matt Kirk. We appreciate you checking out this episode. If you haven't checked us out before, go in and check us out anywhere you download podcasts. Also, you can go to our website, dadswatchingsports.com. And Matt, we're on Facebook. Matt keeps us on the Gram, Twitter, really anything and everything. We are excited to be a part of it. And thank you so much for listening. And I'm really excited about our guest that we've got coming up, joining us for the remainder of the show. Ryan Lemond from Kentucky Sports Radio, amongst other things, is our guest. Ryan, thanks so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys doing, man? I appreciate you having me on tonight.
Man, we're doing fantastic, and we're glad to have you on. When I shot you a message through Twitter, we talked about the fact that this is a show we like to talk sports, but also we're all dads, and we like to talk about our lives as dads and the things that kind of go on, whether it be the good, the bad, the ugly, the funny, kind of really whatever it is. And I knew, as a big fan of KSR, that I listened to you guys pretty religiously. You've got a really great story with your family. So just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do for work, and a little bit about Kentucky Sports Radio. And then most importantly, tell us about your family and that dynamic.
Well, that's why when you hit me up, I wanted to go ahead and do this, because you hit me in my wheelhouse, with KSR and sports and being a dad. But yeah, I have three boys, and all three are adopted. And I think that's what kind of makes my story a little more unusual than most people. My oldest son is 22 years old from my first marriage. He was adopted when he was 6 months old. So I've had him since he was a baby. And then my second son is with my wife, Amanda. We adopted him as a foster child when he was 3 years old. He is now 17. And then we adopted a second boy, also as a foster child. He was 3 years old, and he is now 13. So he's still here in the house here with us now. So he's the athlete. He's the basketball player in the family. So, he's the one that we're following around now, playing basketball and everything. So, but I grew up in an athletic family. My dad was a high school basketball coach in Southern Indiana. Well, I grew up, going to the gym the time I could walk, following him to basketball practices, basketball games. I ended up playing for him, 3 years varsity basketball, playing for him as my coach. We weren't very good, but, him being my coach was 3 of the greatest years of my life. I wouldn't have traded that for anything. So I think that just led to my love of, trying to find a career of being in sports broadcasting. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of led me to where I am. I was in TV broadcasting for nearly 18 years, almost 19 years in TV. And then I kind of fell into this radio gig where I've had now for almost 9 years, a little over 9 years now. So here we are, dad and radio jock and realtor. That's my life right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a busy life, I am sure. So talk us through the decision on adoption and just kind of what that process looked like, and why you and your family decided to go that route.
Well, with my first wife, we tried to have kids, just like everybody else, and it just didn't happen. And just like infertility hits a lot of families, a lot of couples, and we tried a lot of different things, and it just came to a point where we had kind of exhausted a lot of different options, and adoption was out there, and it just felt like that was the thing to do, and we pursued it, and we came upon an adoption agency in Louisville, Kentucky, and the first child that we were ever put in contact with was this little boy who was born in northern Kentucky, and the first time that he was ever in my arms, I just knew. Sometimes you just know. He was 5 months old at the time, and I just knew at that moment that, I was supposed to be his dad. mean, it's really hard to explain. I've tried to explain it before, but I just knew the first time I held him that I was supposed to be his dad. And I kind of knew at that moment too, that all the pain and all the struggles and everything we'd gone through in the infertility process up to that point led us to this moment that we were supposed to be here to be this little boy's dad. He needed us as much as we needed him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's it all kind of became clear. And it was at a restaurant in Northern Kentucky. Frisch's. It was at a Frisch's Big Boy in Northern Kentucky.
Nice.
Yeah, and everything just kind of all became clear at that moment, and we ended up adopting him. Like I said, now he's 22 years old. He's on his way to becoming a young man that I'm very proud of. And unfortunately, that marriage didn't work out. Kind of fell apart. Got remarried again with Amanda, who I'm with now. She grew up in a children's home in Barberville, where her mother was killed when she was 6 years old. And so she was in a children's home for 11 years of her life. And so foster parenting was very important to her. And so the fact that I had already adopted one kid, we just kind of a natural development. So we became foster parents. And the very first child that we became foster parents to was Michael, that we ended up adopting, when he was 3 years old. So, it's just kind of funny, God kind of has a plan for everybody, and it just kind of how our plan just kind of led that way. And then Josiah came along, a couple years later as well as a foster kid. Matter of fact, we only had 2 foster kids in our house, and we ended up adopting both of them. So I think that kind of tells you where our plan, or God's plan, was for us.
Yeah, well, that's awesome, and God bless you guys for doing that. I mean, that's just to have that on your heart and be able to take children into your home and really to be able to do that. And my wife and I, we have some friends that are also foster parents, and we tell each other all the time, like that's got to be God, like puts a specific something on someone's heart to be able to do that, because that's a tough job or a tough responsibility to foster a child and to be able to do that and then bring those children into your home and adopt them. Kudos to y'all. That's awesome. You mentioned the sports broadcasting world, and we'll talk some KSR maybe here in just a few minutes. But talk us through how you kind of got into that and really just everything that you've covered and maybe some of the biggest moments of your sports broadcasting career.
Well, like I said, I grew up when my dad was a high school basketball coach. So I grew up – that's the world I grew up in, going to high school basketball games in southern Indiana where basketball is king, Yeah. So it's just kind of the world I grew up in. I always thought I was going to be this, basketball star in Southern Indiana and play for Bob Knight, play for the Indiana Hoosiers and be Mr. Basketball in Indiana. But, when you're 5'0", that ain't going to happen. So that didn't work out. But my mom will tell you my sports broadcasting career started when I was, playing Nerf basketball in my bedroom, and I was always doing play-by-play. I mean, the whole time. If I was playing whip football in the front yard, I was doing play-by-play. If I was playing Nerf basketball in my bedroom, I was doing play-by-play. If I was shooting baskets as I got older in the driveway, I was doing play-by-play the whole time. So I think obviously I didn't have the talent to be a professional athlete. I was going to be a coach or going to sports broadcasting. It was just kind of a natural progression. So when I got to college at Kentucky Wesleyan, I played baseball at Kentucky Wesleyan. And I did a little play-by-play at Kentucky Wesleyan. And even when I got back home in my hometown, and I just fell in love with it. I mean, I just knew that's what I was going to do. So I got into work at an internship at a TV station in Evansville, Indiana, sports broadcasting. And that was my love. I mean, I was either going to be a coach or I was going to do that. And I fell in love with that. And I did sports TV for 6 years in Evansville, Indiana, before I got the job at WLEX in Lexington. And then I worked at WLEX for almost 12 years there before I decided we had these boys. And I just decided, man, I can't be a dad the way I want to be a dad and work until midnight every night and miss their games. I mean, there's a story where I know I'm talking a lot.
No, you're good. You're good.
We were we were at the dinner table one night, and my oldest son, I think he was 9, and he said, "Dad, are you going to miss my game again tomorrow night?" And I said, "No, I'm not. I had something clicked to me that night and said, look, I got to do something else with my life. I can't keep working nights and miss my own kids' games. I can't keep going to, Tate's Creek's games and Henry Clay games and miss my own kids' games."
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's when I decided to get out of TV, and I went into real estate because I already had a couple like rental properties. And so I was already into real estate a little bit. So I just completely got out and was just kind of doing radio on the side. And that's how I kind of started transitioning into radio a little bit that way.
Yeah. So you right now you're doing a KSR thing. I know you guys do so much, and kudos to the job y'all do and the great work y'all do there, the real estate. But how does that work-life balance? Because I know, as a big fan of the show, there's those times when, Matt will call you in to do something. And you're like, man, but I got to go pick up on the boys. How is this going to work? So how does that continue to play out in terms of your work-life balance with all that going on?
Well, and because like you're right, I'm the only guy on the show who's married. Yeah. I'm the only guy on the show who has kids, and they don't get it sometimes. I mean, they don't understand. I mean, you guys, your dad,
yeah,
so you get the demands put on your time sometimes, and they don't understand it. When I have to say that, like, look, I can't do this. I have other responsibilities. The radio show is from 10 to 12. Well, after that, I may have to pick my kid up and go to a doctor's appointment. And after that doctor's appointment, I may have to pick another kid up and take him to a practice. And after that practice, I may have to pick the first kid up and take him to a game. I mean, they don't get that sometimes. So it does take on a different element. But the radio show from 10 to 12 on a normal day, if I can put that to bed, and then I can do all my real estate stuff after that. Sometimes it should be in a perfect world where I can do my radio stuff in the morning and then my real estate stuff the rest of the day, unless we're on the road or unless it's a game day, we have pregame shows or things like that. Then I kind of have to do some juggling a little bit. But the real estate stuff, a lot of times I can set my own schedule and move things around a little bit, especially if Josiah's got a game or he's got practice or something like that a little bit. But those guys, they don't get it. They don't get it. They don't understand it all.
Well, and with COVID this year, you guys aren't doing the summer tour, so it's I guess that's played out a little bit in your favor, to where you've been around a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely it has. Stuck at home like you guys, like everybody else. Everybody else is stuck at home. We don't have the demands on our time like everybody else, but the real estate market has still been crazy busy. I mean, I'm still showing houses and selling houses as much as I ever have, despite the pandemic and the COVID crisis. Believe it or not.
Absolutely.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. Oh, there's no doubt about that. He's Ryan Lemond of Kentucky Sports Radio, listening to Dad's Watching Sports. Michael Draper and Matt Kirk here. Matt is a big SEC football fan, and I know one of the best games ever – he's an Arkansas fan, and one of the best games ever that they played was against the Kentucky Wildcats and Jared Lorenzen as quarterback. So, Matt, I'm going to toss it to you for a question about Mr. Lorenzen.
It's 2003, and it's Arkansas versus Kentucky. There were 2 block punts in the game. Both were recovered for touchdowns. I'm not sure if you remember that one or not. But, I'm a big Razorback fan, like Michael just said, and I'm a big guy. I'm 6'5" and weigh about 310 or so, and I'm a lefty, and I've always loved Jared Lorenzen. And I hear you have more of a special relationship with him. And I'm just curious about that and wanting to ask more about that and ways that you guys are trying to do things to remember him on the radio.
Yeah. Jared and I had a very, very good relationship. And I'm going to talk about that game first. That game, I was working at WLAX, and we were doing live shots for the 11 o'clock news set up outside the football stadium. So obviously – we go live when the game is still going on. We're out in the parking lot, and the game is still going on. So I come back into the stadium after the live shots are over. Newscast is over. Game is still going on. And one of my favorite memories, sports memories of all time, is walking through that stadium and all these dads, since we're all dads, sitting there in their seats, holding their kid who is still asleep They're all sitting in their seats, and their kids are sound asleep in their lap, but there is no way the dads are going to leave the stadium. No. They're staying there, holding their kids that are asleep, but they are not going to leave. And I just love that about that night and about that game. But Jared and I became very close because he became somewhat of a mentor for my middle son. My middle son, for whatever reason, picked Jared to be his hero. Now, keep in mind, Jared's UK career is over by the time Michael was 6 years old. Jared was playing for the New York Giants, and all he knew was Jared was this larger-than-life figure, and he was left-handed, and he knew he's a friend of mine, and for some reason, Michael just picked Jared to be his hero. Jared didn't even play. He was on the sidelines, and Michael was left-handed, and Michael was a big kid, kind of a chunky kid. And we called Jared to come to Michael's 6th birthday party in Lexington after I think he just won the Super Bowl. And he did. He came to Lexington, brought a football, autographed it. All these little 6-year-old kids are there, and he did it. And from then on, Jared and I became just really close. And he would call Michael on his own just to check on him, see how he's doing. He'd call me, and then when Michael, his weight got to be an issue, he would call and talk to Michael about it. When Michael's grades got to be an issue, he'd call and talk to him about it. And then when KSR started, we brought Jared in to be a big part of KSR. He did all of our pregame shows, football pregame shows with us. When Matt was on vacation, he always did shows with me at KSR. And when he would do these shows, Michael would come in with me just to be around Jared. Sometimes he would just lay on the floor in the radio studio just to be around Jared. It's hard to explain what my son felt for Jared, and Jared knew that, and he reciprocated it by always talking to him and asking about him. And like I said, he would call him and just want to know how he's doing. And when he would know that something wasn't right, he would call and check on him. And Jared's death has had a profound effect on my son, and it's kind of sent him into a downward spiral that he's still not out of, to be honest. And he was a very important person in our family. There's no doubt.
Yeah. I mean, to add to that, I mean, he was a hugely important person across the Big Blue Nation. I mean, I think, you look at the kind of the Mount Rushmore of Kentucky football, and Jared Lorenzen, without a doubt, is at the top of that list, or there with Tim Couch and maybe a few others. So it was a tough loss for everybody, for sure. Ryan, a couple more things, and then we'll let you get out of here as we got to wrap up the show as well. But KSR is kind of famously known for those of us that listen to it for the infamous brackets that you guys put out from time to time. Whether it's been a food bracket, a movie bracket, I mean, really kind of all across the board. So I got to ask you, what's been your favorite bracket, and maybe who was your favorite champion that you guys crowned?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, we always do a food bracket. Yeah. I mean, I think we've done like 5 or 6 food brackets, and we've ended up with a different champion every time. I mean, Subway won the food bracket one time, Outback Steakhouse, Waffle House won the last food bracket that we just did, for crying out loud. Who else has won it? I mean, we've had these crazy.
Let's say, was it chicken place? Qdoba, yeah, that's it.
Qdoba won the first one, I think. Now we've done the last couple we've done has been when Matt's been on vacation. We've done with Lee Cruz and Haley Harmon. We did Christmas movies when he was off on Christmas. And then we did the last one we just did was One Hit Wonders.
Yeah.
Those have been fun because they've been something different that we have done without him. So, and I'm telling you, Drew and I could predict who we think is going to be even in the Final Four, and it never happens.
Absolutely.
Never, absolutely never happens. So that's why I enjoy those shows so much.
I know. Well, and you guys are somewhat in the same boat that we are. And, we have a sports show, and there is not a whole lot of sports going on right now, especially for somebody like you guys who really target on one specific team or university. So, yeah, there's just not a lot going on. You got to get creative with the stuff you talk about. Last thing I wanted to touch on is if you are familiar with KSR, you probably remember last summer Ryan had an opportunity to make some putts to avoid going to prison. So Ryan, why don't you tell us just a little bit about that and how your days in prison, KSR jail, ended up?
Yeah, I think it started with the caller. Actually, some caller brought this up where there was some stunt where they said if you had like 10 3-pointers, would you take it knowing that if you hit one, you got like, I don't know. No, I think I know what it was. It was half-court shots. I think it was half-court shots. And if you got one, it was $1 million. But if you missed it, you had to spend a year in jail if you missed them all or something like that. I think that's what it was.
Yeah, that sounds pretty accurate.
And then we just started kind of just hypothesizing about, okay, well, what if it was 3-pointers? And then it just became, well, what if we just did it for putts? And then we ended up with these 5-foot putts that if every 5-foot putt I hit, I was supposed to get, I think, was it $100? And if I missed it, no, it's $200. If I hit it, I was going to get $200. But if I missed it, I was supposed to spend 2 nights in this makeshift KSR jail in our restaurant. Big publicity stunt. We were going to do it. Like, yeah. And so we turned it into where I was going to donate the money that I made to charity. So if I made all 5, that's $1,000 we donated to charity. It'd be it'd be real funny. Well, here's, during warm-ups, I was hitting everything. I mean, I was just draining them. So Matt even came up to me and said, hey, you realize you have to miss at least one of these. We made this jail. We have built this up where you have to miss at least one and spend 2 nights in that jail. I said, okay, if I hit my first 4, I'll miss the last one on purpose. I mean, I really said that. And then once it starts, the first one lips out. The second one lips out. All of a sudden, the putter feels like it weighs 500 pounds. The third one lips out, and now I'm done. The fourth one's not even close. The fifth one's not even close. I missed all 5 of them. So that's 10 nights in the KSR jail.
Yeah.
He agreed.
Not look comfortable, by the way.
He agrees to cut it to 6 nights just out of generosity. But we turned it into this big fundraiser where we ended up raising $32,000.
It's unbelievable.
Like, crazy. I mean, it was stupid crazy. Where we donated to these 3 different charities: CASA, which is the adoption agency that helped us adopt my youngest son; Epilepsy Foundation of Kentucky, since Matt has a mild form of epilepsy; and then Keith Madison's foundation, the former UK baseball coach. He sends baseball equipment and teaches baseball to kids in Puerto Rico and then Dominican Republic. So we split it up 3 ways: $32,000, just big fundraiser just for me being a horrible putter. It turned out to be a great event just from our stupid just talking on the radio one day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, guys, we got to get out of here. We are running short on time. But Ryan, thanks so much for joining us. We will be back next week on Dad's Watching Sports. You guys make sure and tune in. We'll see you next week. Take care, everybody.